changes.
What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Movie Schmovie. This is episode number 432. My name is Steve, one of the co-hosts of the show, and as always, I'm joined by
Ron.
Hashtag Rufia, hashtag Lambo, hashtag Henny, hashtag Big Up.
Big Up. There you go. Got to get Dennis in there early. But you're not Dennis. You're John.
I'm John.
Hey, John. Good to see you guys. I feel like I've seen you so much this week, and
I know.
I like it.
I know. It's cool.
Yeah, welcome back to a new episode. Today we're going to go over my required viewing pick, which is the next Netflix film, It's What's Inside. And then we're going to kind of get into our Schmanksgiving episode for 2024, where we each kind of go round robin discussing and sharing things that we are each thankful for in our lives in the year 2024. I guess I'll just jump right into the required viewing. I guess I was curious, what did you guys know of this movie? Heard of it? Any trailer awareness? Want to see, or just like, what is this movie, Steve? When I said it last week,
I think I had maybe slotted it into a category called Netflix movies that I will probably like, but that I'll never get around to. Like,
oh damn, okay,
you know, like there's a lot of stuff that hits that platform that's like, oh, that's a reasonably well made looking thing, but right. It's like that couple week period where maybe people are talking about it or whatever, passes by, and then I never think about it again because there's too much. But then if someone says it's actually pretty good, you know, that's usually your signpost to say, all right, I'm gonna. Maybe, you know, it would have to be a reason. It would be someone like you saying, let's watch this, or another friend,
sure,
you know, reminding me of it. But I think the title kind of stuck with me because I thought it was kind of a catchy title. You know, I mean, it's one of those titles that's like, we've all heard it's what's inside that matters, or it's what's inside that counts. So it's kind of cool when somebody comes up with a movie title that is unique and kind of strange, but also fits right in as a little, you know, it's a little linguistic thing that you've heard before, but it hasn't been used, at least not that I knew of, as a title. So it kind of stuck with me as like, oh, that's kind of a cool name. That could be a million different things, you know?
Yeah.
With a name like that. But yeah, so I think that I'm glad you gave me the nudge, just because I would have been completely uninformed about this one. What about you, Ronald? Did you think about this one at all?
I didn't know anything about it. No, I was very unaware and very ready to get on the ride that is It's What's Inside. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
It's What's Inside.
It's What's Inside.
Yeah.
Surprisingly not related to the It franchise.
Yeah. Weird, right?
Or the What franchise.
Is
there a movie called What?
Yeah. No, it's called Nope. It's called Nope.
But there should be. I mean,
there
I'm just
should
thinking
be a movie called
just called What?
Apparently, 1972. There's a movie. It's a Roman Polanski movie. Wah 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 wah. Roman Polanski.
Well, we can just use his titles, right? Isn't that one of the things that happens when you've been canceled?
Right. Yeah. So, who made this movie? Who produced this? What studio made this movie? Because it feels like a Blumhouse. Like, it feels very Blumhousey. Like, it feels like small budget, good concept. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Body swapping, you know, craziness. It feels innovative. Like, it feels like, you know, I thought it was going to be like Talk to Me, but the body swap aspect is a little different. And yeah, I think that was the first thing that jumped out at me. I'm thinking like, oh, Talk to Me. I just saw this.
Well, there's a moment that's like, feels like it's a direct riff on the scene in Talk to Me. You know what I mean? Right. Like, I had the same, even with the music kicking in and stuff, it felt like they were doing something. So yeah, I agree that I had that same thought.
Yeah, no, this is like an independent movie. This is a film that was produced independently, 2022, went to Sundance, played its midnight section, and was quickly acquired by Netflix for $17 million, which was the largest deal made at that version of the festival. It also was at South by, but yeah, it came out on Netflix this October. But yeah, this is one of those things, like, it's a genre-y thing. It does feel like it, you know, I can see the appeal for Netflix in terms of programming. and I was a pretty buzzed about movie at the festival. So I mean, they just kind of grabbed it quickly and for a pretty hefty price tag. Um, but yeah, I definitely get the comparison or the assumption for the Talk to Me comparison. Especially like you in the trailer, it kind of shows that round table, spinning around, like everybody's perspective shifting, and
the guy's showing up with the briefcase as a kind of
right,
like
right,
it's like
yeah,
it's
like,
like
I
a
got
metaphor
something.
for drugs or something, but it's
Yeah.
not drugs. Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
It also reminded me of the after party and
Sure.
even a little Knives Out and a
Any-
little bit of
any
that,
of those, like,
bodies,
yeah.
bodies, bodies. There's just a few movies that hit. There's a certain kind of people in a house, and there's a little bit of a commentary on like influencer culture or just modern culture, the way people relate to each other. There's a little bit of that sprinkled in that makes it feel like it's like there's a new subgenre that you could track of all these different things of like group of people that have a past that are getting together, part of the present.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
I think the bodies thing is a good thought because I felt like watching this, or after watching this, for me, I guess this was more of the movie that I thought Bodies was going to be, like
Yeah.
because of the buzz and the reputation that it had gotten before I saw it. It kind of
I agree.
let me down a little bit. I did enjoy that movie, but it definitely was not what I wanted it to be or expected it to be. And this was, I mean, to be honest, like up front, like it was much better than I thought it would be, and I was excited to see it. And the more I think about it, the more I kind of acknowledge that, like I may have like really really liked or loved this movie. I love the idea of, and like you said, John, like the title is so clever, and um I just like the breaking up of the film in terms of, the first time what happens, and just for anybody that didn't watch along with us, without really going too spoilery, there's a character who brings a device to a party, to a get together before a wedding of a bunch of friends from college, and the device basically kind of hooks them all together, and they basically are able to switch bodies, like the consciousness of one character can go into the body of another, and it's kind of presented initially as a cool game of like werewolf or mafia, of guessing who is in who, guessing who is inside of each person's physical body. And the way they kind of present that and kind of like load up these characters before anything actually happens with the game or the device, and the baggage that each of them kind of bring into this party, to each other's individual relationships and conversations that you see very briefly amongst this cast of characters. I just thought it was really cool. Like I loved how like each time they went into it, because there's really kind of like three times that they go into it, into this swapping game, and every time it kind of escalates, and it kind of certain characters kind of prey on other characters vulnerabilities, and it's like the stronger the relationships are between characters that you think, or even if you see the cracks in it, they become even more vulnerable and more exposed, and it just gets pretty mean. And I kind of dug that about it.
And
Yeah,
personal, like mean, like you're right about what bodies was missing was that sort of like, because that turns into more of a locked in the house with a killer kind of movie,
right.
Whereas this is much more about the relationships and the friendships and the past and the things people don't forgive and the
Exactly.
No, I think I have a complaint that's a compliment about this movie, which is that it's confusing. Like the first time you watch it, like it's almost needlessly confusing for some of the stuff that ends up happening, because it's actually closer to what you might think in terms of the resolution. And I feel like the movie piles on like so many scenes of characters explaining what they're doing or what they thought was happening, that I think a little bit less of that, and it would have been more clear what was happening, because you kind of can intuit it. I liked all the little subtle tells of which character was which person. I didn't so much enjoy when they would like, I thought this, oh, you were this person. Oh, you lied to me when you did this. It just felt like that stuff made me go, oh, is something crazier going on here? And it kind of distracted me from the fact that it was more, I mean, to say linear or satisfying of a story. But I do think some of the payoffs are there. I think I was more taken by the structure of the movie too, in spots, than I was in the actual storytelling. The cast is likable. The acting's pretty good. I mean, the writing's pretty funny. And like when a character needs to be mean, like you said, what they say is legitimately mean. If a character needs to be kind of funny, then it's kind of funny. It's a little stilted, but I feel like it's a messy movie. And I think it comes from the fact that it's got such a tricky concept. And there's just a couple of big hurdles that you get past. Like, don't you think, Ronald, like this group of people is very accepting of this scenario? Like, it doesn't take much for these people to be like, oh, we're switching bodies? Okay, cool, cool, we're doing it. Like, and again, I get why they need to do it, but that kind of gives you, there's like a comic tone to that, that I felt like, okay, this movie can't really be about real people at this point, because nobody real would just be like, oh, we're going to do that again. Oh, we're swapping bodies? Oh, this is a machine? Right. Okay, cool. Got it.
Yeah.
But once you get past that, I think they got back into, and I think this is almost like a sci-fi movie more than a horror. It's like one of the things where once you get past the sort of sci-fi concept, you're back in human interaction and behavior. And I thought that was kind of interesting. And to your point, Steve, that some of the character interactions, they kind of cut deep. Some of the vulnerabilities of these relationships, they feel sort of real. And you can even see some of them coming. You're like, oh man, this is going to totally fuck with this couple we follow into the story, Shelby and Cyrus.
Yeah.
But I do think that like it took me doubling back and going, oh, okay, to realize, oh, that stuff was almost like it was distracting me from some of the sort of simple things that were happening. But as far as the visual things, I'll just point out a couple. I thought the montage of her with her selfies, like trying all the different backgrounds or the different filters before she published, that was just a really cool, instantly you get who she is, that she's sort of an insecure person who wants to be this kind of online person that people look to, but she doesn't know what she's doing. And then the scene where everyone was talking about Forbes, the guy who shows up with the device. And as they're telling the story, you see photographs of the past that keep changing based on what people are adding to it. It was so clever and so inventive. I mean, you have a couple of things like that by my interest. I do think the last 5 minutes of the movie is a lot of explaining when it could be more relying on the visual cues and the things that we can figure out. And I also do think that I'll just say just in case someone wants to watch it and we're recommending it to them, I will say there's a character that shows up towards the end that's very important, that feels a little bit like, oh, this character just pops up and suddenly they're very involved in like an epilogue. But I think that felt like not as well calibrated as the other stuff that you were talking about, Steve, where all these interactions feel like there's setups and payoffs for the story that are totally rooted in the relationships. But it is a little confusing, don't you think, when you've just been introduced to these 7 characters and suddenly they're switched and now you're trying to figure out who you care about or what you care about, and then they do it again and it's different. It's clever. It's like so well done that it almost demands you watch it a second time, knowing like, oh, now I know what this person's trying to do, or I know what the limitations of this are going to be. Because at the end, it's almost like you have to stop and go, wait, who's left? You know, who's actually in whose body and who's left? It's like the fact that it's so tricky and clever almost dulls the emotional impact of some of that stuff, I guess is what I'm saying. But otherwise, it's a very well made movie and extremely just cinematically inventive. Ronald, anything else about the movie that stood out to you, or just any thoughts?
I think what works is like I'm a rhythm based guy. Like when it comes to that stuff, it's like 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, dead. You know what I mean? It's like that stuff, like when it keeps happening, you're like, okay, all right, so somebody dies on the third thing. Or like, and then, or if there's like a responsibility in it, right? Like in Talk to Me, the responsibility was like, you have to let go in a certain amount of time. This happens a certain amount of time, your body gets used to the rhythm of them just doing it. But what if somebody holds it for too long the last time? They're like, hold on, the rules are different now. Somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do. And this movie does that in a way that like fucked me up. I'm like, whoa, so you can change the rules of this? Like you don't like the way this is? I like that. And I think that's kind of what makes this work. It's like the stakes start to become bigger because these people are taking chances that you weren't expecting them to take. Then you realize that like, even if I don't know this person for 5 minutes, they're risking my life right now. Whatever the fuck you're doing, I don't know you, you're fucking with my life. And that starts to get real crazy. And that was, what a choice. I mean, like, Um, I think something's happening with like you're right. There's like this genre of movie that's coming out that feels like it almost feels like you're playing a game with the people. You know,
Mm-hmm.
with Knives Out in this game, this movie, and Talk to Me, it feels like you're collectively playing this game that almost feels like an interactive tape, almost like you're like you're the eighth person, you're the ninth person in a group, and you're watching this stuff happen, and it almost feels like the danger is like, man, how would I feel if somebody did that to me, or what would I
Yeah.
do if
Right,
I were in
right.
that situation, or like Substance, the Substance, I felt
Oh
the
no,
same.
very much so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm like these like that involve you in a different way than horror thrillers did before. Whereas it felt like before you were just watching the person going around killing people. It feels like you're so much more involved in the plot of the film that I'm starting to like this like subgenre. It feels like game. I don't even know what to call it. Like game
See,
horror.
I don't actually think that's new. I think that horror
No,
movies have
no,
always
not at
done
all.
what you're saying. I don't, but I do think what you're talking about that I think is really interesting is these are movies that are commenting on modern issues. It's like
Mm,
it's you know what I mean. All those
yeah,
movies feel modern because the issue like this the way the friendships are working, the fact that there's like a parasocial nature to these friends. This one girl idolizes her old friend online, but
yeah,
in person they're not that tight. Little things like that. What makes that feel special is like these filmmakers are actually making movies about the moment they're in. The Substance is another one. It's about the moment that we're in. So yeah,
yeah, yeah.
I mean I don't know what we would want to call that kind of subgenre, or just maybe put it under the little thing of like horror movies that deal with modern, like actual modern, not like generally modern, but like
Right.
what's on people's minds this year,
Yeah.
this decade, as opposed to larger themes. But yeah, what would we call that, Ron? What would be a name for the,
I don't know,
sort of
because the difference is like it feels like I'm in the
headline
game.
horror?
Yeah, but it's like modern, but it feels like I'm in the game that they're playing. Like when I watch like slasher movies, I feel like I am only scared because this person's gonna hurt people in this environment. I never feel like I'm there.
Right.
But these feel like
Right.
what if tomorrow when we went to go fit, if we went to go see a movie, one of us pulled out a game and was like, "Hey, you want to play this game?" If you smack it could be like, "Oh man, it'd be crazy if they made one of what's that old game from the '80s where you do the pattern?
Simon
Simon
Oh yeah.
Says or
or
Simon?
Simon. Yeah, just
Oh
Simon.
God, man, I might write a horror film. I might write a horror shirt out
Well,
of that.
wasn't there a game in what was that movie called? Was that called The Blackening? Did they find a
Yes,
game
Oh
that was
yeah,
kind of
yes,
yeah.
like
the
that?
Game of the
That-
Blackening.
That
Yeah,
was a game.
yeah.
Yeah.
another game, man. Those movies really excite me.
No, I kind of get what you're saying. Like that, there's like a game in the movie, and the movie's almost like struck. Like this movie was even structured as a game on the viewer in a way. It's like
Yes, yeah.
you're really but I think you're hitting on something interesting too, because even though the age group might be different, and a lot of these movies are about younger people than me or my generation, I can still see that it's still it's still very easy to picture
Yeah.
yourself like, oh, we all got a big house with some old friends right before a wedding, and then some messed up stuff happens. So it is sort of like you're plugging yourself into it, and not like in an archetypal way, the way you might with like a movie where you're going, oh, there's a final girl or there's this or that, where you're relating to it in a vague way, but you're actually picturing like, what would it be like if I was around my friends,
Yeah.
and all
Yeah.
the little rough spots got exposed by some game like this. Yeah, it's very easy to like it. I think that's where so it's almost like social horror or something. I don't know. There's
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
There's
yeah.
there's a lot of different things happening there.
Yes, yes. There's like there's something to that, like social, because there is something about like what people do when they get in those situations. Like it's like a character thing, and a lot of what makes people that aren't 20 relate. It's like I would never do this at 20, or I would maybe this person's a little short-minded
Yeah.
than that I was when I was younger, or maybe they're dumber,
Sure.
or maybe they're I can relate to this person because this is exactly what I would do. I think that's something so cool.
Or
And-
that's what I did. Like you see a character that makes you go, oh, that's how I acted when I was like, jealous, or when I was
Yes.
desiring somebody or whatever. Like I think this movie has an interesting, and it maps out interestingly of like who wants who and it really does become I mean, I think it's a feature of the movie that it becomes very mind-bending by the time you're halfway in and you're like, wait, who is kissing who here? And is like the one person is kissing the person that's inside and the other person is kissing the person that's outside, but it's not, neither one is with their crush. Do you know what I mean? Like it's interesting. Yeah. It's interesting.
Wow, dude.
I heard recently that interesting is a bullshit filler word and that people should stop saying it. But sometimes, what else are you going to say? Like, I think people say that and then they talk about vocabulary builders as though you're supposed to say it's captivating. Like, that's better than saying interesting. And I think you sound like a fucking douche if you walk around just saying synonyms for the simple words. It's like, I think the whole point would be this: if you're not going to say it's interesting, say something more interesting than that. Don't just say another word that means interesting.
I was watching an interview with Brad Pitt. And he said, and he's like, that is a low-tech transitional sound. And I was like, oh my God.
A low-tech what?
Transitional sound.
Sound?
Yeah, just to get from one subject to the other.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah, the low-tech transitional sound. And I was like,
it's a human dial tone.
Yeah, it was like really cool of him. It sounded really smart, but also like, goddamn, like how many of those things do we have? I think about when I'm on stage. And so I was like, man, that's crazy. Yeah. Anyway.
Just buy yourself time.
Or you're like, like stand-up comics that say like, what else?
Oh, yeah. I would else myself to death, man. I would what else you to death. What else?
You know what my version of that is I feel like there was something else I wanted to say.
Yeah.
There was something else. Oh, God. But I also think there's the stuff you say just in the middle. I've been editing a lot of podcasts recently, and so I hear all the things, and it's like there's a lot of like there's a rhythm to saying, and that sometimes if you cut out the you're like, well, I'm losing something. The is part of the person's rhythm. But other times, if a person says like your ear starts to hurt, where you're like, okay, this has to be I got to save the listener, and I have to make this person sound better. But I think that low tech transitional sound. That's a good
low tech transitional sound. I was like, holy shit, Brad Pitt, that's really sharp.
Holy shit, Brad Pitt.
It's an LTTS.
It sounds like the beginning of like a Little Dicky Rob. Holy shit, Brad Pitt.
It does.
Holy shit, Brad Pitt. You know what to do. You know what to do with it. Something like that.
That sounds more like a cheer rhythm. Like
I was going. Yeah. Run.
You know what to do with it. Okay.
Holy
all right.
Shit. Pitt.
Oh man. All right. Cool. Well. Again. It's What's Inside is on Netflix. If you didn't watch it with us, you can go back and watch it. We didn't spoil too much in terms of what happens in those last minutes, but I was very much a fan of it.
So a little sidebar, should I know some of these actors from things that they were largely unrecognized by me? And I think that helped this movie. It really helped this sort of, the kind of almost like the human vulnerability always seems stronger when you don't see them as actors. You actually see them as this character.
Yeah, I know one person.
Which one?
What is her name? She's from that show on Fox. Shelby. Brittany O'Grady. I know from that spinoff of that spinoff of what was a Terrence Howard show? Star. Star was a spinoff of
Power?
No, not Power. No. It was on Fox.
Fox.
It was huge.
With Cookie
Lyman.
I can't remember the name of it. Yeah,
I know spacing out on that name. It's embarrassing. The three of us should be able to.
Right, we should know this.
Empire.
Yes, it was like a spinoff of Empire, and they were like, she was in a singing group, and she could sing, and they had a lot of drama, and Lee Daniels produced it, and that means that there's a lot of trauma, a lot of abuse. That's Lee Daniels' thing.
Yeah, but I didn't recognize her from the spinoff. I never saw the spinoff, but I think you're right though. It does work in favor of the movie.
You know, a moment that I thought she played really well, and it was just an odd little moment that I love in retrospect even more because it's such a little odd moment. But when they're walking up to the house and a bird hits her in the face.
Yes.
And the way she says, a bird hit me in the face. Like, she has this attitude of like, again, it's one of your early hints. I guess the opening scene between her and Cyrus is you get a hint that she's kind of like, she's trying stuff and she's not really always succeeding at what she's trying to do. But in that moment, she seems so much like this kind of awkward person who has weird things happen to them. And like, he was like, oh, come on, babe, it's cool. But you could see her attitude of like, fuck. Like, I can't even walk from the car to the house without some weird shit happening to me. I thought that was a good little character beat. And when I went back, like I said, to watch it a second time, I was like, oh, she really played that. It's because it's funny and kind of weird, but she doesn't overdo it like, oh, she's a klutz and she's crazy. It was really just like a bad omen that something happened like that, you know? Anyway.
Yeah. Are we going to do our next pick now or? Okay. So what's that, John?
I will pick a film that I've been wanting to watch for a long time, and it's one of those movies that, if you know the occasional movie where you probably have acted like you've seen it at some point, like maybe you've been sitting there and someone brought it up, and you know what to say about it. You know that it's a movie from 1958 that is influential to a lot of important movies and hugely influential, supposedly, on George Lucas's concept for Star Wars. Oh. I'm speaking, of course, of Akira Kurosawa's film, The Hidden Fortress.
Okay.
Which is an adventure film that is, a lot of people have pointed to like character dynamics that George Lucas clearly was inspired by, particularly, I think, R2-D2 and C-3PO, the idea of the two kind of lowliest characters being the characters that you see this big adventure through, as something that inspired him. But I also think there's other things as well. But so I just grew up knowing that, one of the big references that cineasts like to use when they talk about Star Wars inspirations was the fact that George Lucas had clearly seen The Hidden Fortress. And I realized I have probably nodded my head and said, oh, yes. And, oh, well, sure, yeah, I know that. And maybe even on this show, at some point, I talked about that movie like I'd seen it. But I don't think I've actually watched it all the way through, if I've ever seen it. So we are going to go back to 1958 with a classic. I mean, this should be one of those films that's a classic. So it might be one of those where you're like, oh, hey, yeah. No wonder. This is really good. Cool. But who knows? It's also potentially one of those that hasn't aged that well. I don't hear people talking that much about it. It's not one of the Kurosawas that's like one people mention. But it's always been on my list.
Hidden Fortress. Okay.
Hidden Fortress.
I don't think I feel like I've heard it, the name, but I don't think I've ever. Yeah, I never really knew that correlation that of the influence. So
that's just the most famous.
Be fun.
One. Yeah, I think other people have checked it over the years, but as far as like just the it's one of those things that you hear about when someone wants to sound remotely smart and they talk about Star Wars.
Cool.
All right, cool. Do we know where that's playing or where it's available or how people can watch it? I'm sure you did that research already, John.
It's on Max right now, I think.
Oh, wow.
That's
a good one. Yeah, it looks like it's on Max.
I don't know if it's going to remain there for a whole week, but hopefully so. Well, 2 weeks, actually. We're actually recording this episode kind of early, so it'll be almost 2 weeks hence. So.
What if they just remove it? Like,
hopefully it's still there, guys.
That'd be crazy.
For Thanksgiving, we're taking Hidden Fortress off the website. That's the opposite of the Schmovie bump. What would that be? The Schmovie slump? The Schmovie slump.
The Schmovie slump.
The Schmovie dump, obviously.
Yeah.
So I guess we can intro this Schmanksgiving. We used to do this every year, and then we started combining it with Bah Humbug for the last few times we've done it, I think. But yeah, this is just us. This is when we early on realized we liked to kind of have a slow it down episode where we didn't talk about movies as much as we talked about things related to movies or just other things going on. And I remember at the time too, it was like right when we were, like when we were realizing we liked doing this show and it was there for us. So we enjoyed being very positive. I have a feeling if I listen to those episodes now, I'd be like, man, we were sappy. But in that wonderful way. I think we were ahead of the curve of this non-toxic Hollywood man thing. Steve, we were one of the first non-toxic three dudes on a podcast talking about movies.
Way ahead of the curve.
Groups. But yeah, so Schmanksgiving is just we do a little round robin. One of us says something we're thankful for, maybe talks about it a second, and then we go to the next guy, and we're going to do 3 picks for each of us of something kind of entertainment related, most likely, that we are thankful for, that is sort of part of the last year, but it can just be something that you you've always loved if you couldn't find something contemporary. Does anyone want to kick it off?
I think you should, John.
Well, I will start by saying that I like that we are kind of in this lull. Like there was a period of time where on this show, if we talked about the big movies, we were pretty much talking about these giant franchise time out, you know? And I know we just got Gladiator 2, which is technically a franchised movie, but it doesn't quite feel the same.
Right.
And Wicked is technically an extension of an existing IP, so that's sort of the same. But I just mean we're in an era where you get big movies and huge blockbusters, everything from like Oppenheimer to Barbie to I'm sure I was going to look at the box office for this year to see what the hugest grossing movies are, to see like what the sort of non-comic booky, non-Star Wars
Inside
blockbusters. Inside Out. That's huge. Well, that's also a sequel, but not one of those. Not a comic book movie. Not a Star Wars movie. So I just think like I like the how in the MCU after the snap, is it the blip? That's what they call the 5-year period. That right now we're in what I'm calling the lull, where we're between the big successful era of Marvel movies where it dominated the conversation, and there's a part of us that sort of hopes they regain some of that steam and that they can just we'd like to see. It's kind of like we'd like to see. Even though a lot of people that hate Mike Tyson wanted to see Mike Tyson clean the floor with Jake Paul. Is that his name? That sounds wrong. That's even a stupid name. No, but you know, you don't really root for the for Mike Tyson necessarily, but you root for him against Jake Paul. And it's like you don't necessarily root for Disney and the big megacorps and Marvel as a franchise, but you root for it against the sort of tide of like malaise and running out of creative steam. You like to think they're going to get it back. So yes, I just compared the MCU to Mike Tyson. I'm sure that's gonna win hearts and minds. But but right now we're in the lull where we're not expecting. It's been a while. This whole year has been sort of a year of different blockbusters. So I just like the fact that we're in a period where. We're even a show like ours that was happy to talk about that stuff. We like big tent poles. We like populist, crowd pleasing movies. Yeah. It's fun to see that that's like a slightly more diverse field than it was for. Really going on a decade. It was very dominated by that, and now we're sort of outside of that. I don't know that in all reality, even though I just said you kind of want to see him swing back, I also kind of hope that now it's just another factor. It's like, oh yeah, they're doing that, and those movies are coming out, but it doesn't have to be the thing that dominates the movie conversation. So I'm thankful for the lull.
Okay. I guess I'll go next. Movie theaters, movie houses. It's just there's something about. I say something that sounds kind of shitty, but I'm glad that not as many people are there. I'm glad that
It's interesting. This take is very relatable. Like it's weird.
I feel
it's a selfish feeling saying
selfish, man. Like
for the industry, but you're like for me.
But for me, it's amazing. I mean, and the thing is, like I live near Cinemark, so it's still every time I go, there's a certain amount of busyness that exists there. I think that maybe my theater is a bad representation of the industry because. You come here, you're like the industry is booming, baby, and then you just throw coins in the sky, and it's just that's what they do.
That's what they do at Cinemark. Gotta watch out, they'll fall and hit you. Yeah.
Business is really booming, weird. Baby.
It's distracting.
Really weird. And everybody's in black and white for some reason, and it's just like film grain over us. But yeah, there's something about
love it.
There's something about like just. Like I think it hit me really hard when I went with you guys. Like I miss being around you guys, but I like that we can record remotely. But I love that we get to see movies together when we do. Like that. I'm good with that. I'm good with the fact that we can occasionally see a movie and talk about it afterwards. Even there's something so special about just sitting out and just talking shit with you guys and laughing and making jokes. Like. We've been doing this for 10 years, man, 10 plus years. And it feels like we just started. Like there's like an eagerness to be around you and laugh and have fun. That's fun as shit, man. Like I felt it when we recorded our secret car recording. of Gladiator 2 right out the theater, hot off the press. But there's something about this theater experiences, man. Like I when I went to go see Wicked, our theater house was like enhanced. It was like that special white marks thing where it's like Dolby, but then like
Dolby, yeah.
Then there's like dynamite under your seat is what it feels like. And clamps on your balls. It feels crazy. Like it feels like everything felt like we were gonna shoot out of our seat. And there was a woman beside me. For one thing, she snuck her phone into the theater and she told us the score of the Ravens game, which was super nice of her. But this lady is like in her 60s. She gets in a ball, man, and just cries her eyes out watching Wicked. And I'm crying and she's crying and my wife's crying. And I'm like, this is a shared experience. And then I got out. When I got up, I thanked her for the score. And I said, I hope she had a good time. And I was sorry that the seats scared her half to death. And she just tapped me. She just like kind of tapped me on my jacket, like, yeah, go ahead, just have a good time. And there's something about that whole thing. Like, I don't know if I would have met this lady otherwise. I get along with everybody, but that we may have passed each other in the supermarket. But
right.
There's something about these communal experiences that they create, and the fact that they feel a little more intimate now because there's less people. God bless the movie theater, man. Like, it's just something about them right now. Just, it feels especially electric. It feels like a privilege. Like, I know that everybody isn't like, people thought that after COVID was less crazy, that there'd be this flooding of people coming back. And I think they need to learn that they need to earn people's seats back, man. Like, they need to earn their attention back. It's not like a given. It's not. People have to want to come back. It's not just like people aren't dumb and they just like, oh, where do I sit? I'm going to sit in a movie theater. It's not like that. You got to make people feel good about coming.
Some people are that way. Some people are that way. No, Ronald, I love that that pick because to me it dovetails in with what I was saying about like the slightly more diverse crop of movies coming out that can be blockbusters. It's like there is a different kind of shared experience, and it doesn't have to be like the same. It can be the same crowd you expect to see at the same kind of movie or whatever. This is like, you're seeing Wicked and you're seeing Gladiator 2, back to back. And those are like totally different movies, but they're both gonna have like a crowd reaction. Yeah. Like that.
Pretty cool, man. It felt. I've seen quite a few movies this year, but I could tell you, man, I think that 2024 has felt the most meaningful. I've had the most meaningful experiences. I've had these like real intimate, fun experiences, like at the Charles and Cinemark and a couple places in Montgomery County. I've been trying to just go around to other theaters. And
don't you think you're kind of back into it? I mean, I know for a while there you weren't going to see movies as much.
I was terrified. I was terrified. I'm immunocompromised. Just for everybody to know that I am immunocompromised. And I was very afraid for a really long time. And I think I'm just getting into a space where, like, you only live twice. And you just go to a movie theater and you just experience it. Like, it feels like I'm back. You're right, man. You said something I really didn't say out loud, man. Like, I'm getting back out there. And it feels like for a while I didn't. And it feels really big. I related to this. It's super strangely emotional. I got into a really bad car accident when I was younger. Broke my wrist, had a hard time breathing, almost died in this car accident. So strange. My cousin gave me the keys to his car and asked me to drive. I hadn't driven in like almost a year. I was like shaking. I didn't really want to do it. And that's what it feels like. Like, getting back in the theater felt scary to me. Like, I was like, this is my health. This is my livelihood. My daughter, I don't want to get my daughter sick. I don't want to get my wife sick who has asthma. It's like, but now that, thank God for shots and stuff like that. Like, I've been pretty good. I'm pretty good now. And I've been enjoying the experience. It feels like I'm getting back out there. Like somebody handed me the keys. Like, it just felt real big. It felt like a big moment.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, honestly, that's a great thing to be thankful for,
Yeah, man. Yeah. Thanks, man. Thanks for bringing that to my attention because I'm like, there's something that I'm not getting at. You said, I'm like, yeah, I'll get back out there. Yeah.
When you said I've seen more movies this year than I have in a long time, I was like, oh yeah, this it is truth. For a while there, you were just not like we've talked talked about a lot of movies on this show that you were waiting until they hit streaming, or we were taking advantage of that shortened window, or we were covering movies that were day and date at home. So I don't know. I think it's interesting to because you've been more likely to have popped out and seen a few movies between episodes recently. And I think
it's been nice.
I'm glad you're back out there.
Thank you.
He's a very polite movie goer. I want everyone to know if you could go see a movie not near Ronald, don't bother him, but if you could just be in the same auditorium with Ronald seeing a movie, honestly, it's chef's kiss.
I don't just randomly.
One of the best moviegoers I know.
I don't say, "Hey, take out your tits, girl." I'm not just yelling. You know, people just yell that at the screen. I don't yell
at the screen.
I don't yell that at the screen.
Nor whoever.
Somebody's just yelling at me, "Hey, girl, what that booty do?" I don't know why people would say that.
I know. I was really surprised that you were screaming that at Gladiator 2.
Oh my God.
Okay, sorry.
No, it's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's your turn.
So my first pick, I'm going with a bit of technology here, and it's because this is like in the end of this year, I've really kind of come around to trying to, maybe in some ways catch up or to lead by example, but I'm finally coming around to using and adopting and really like putting into place in many ways in my life, like AI and large language models. So, you know, whether it's Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, whatever you want to use, I've just really been more open to them. And there's like, you know, a lot of negativity around the idea of what it could replace or displace. And I feel like that's real. And I feel like you know, it's something that will be managed or need to be managed properly. And I don't know that will happen, but I don't know that that's in my control or our control. But I think it's just it's a tool, and I've kind of just stepped into it with that assumption, and that's my feeling about it. I don't condone the use of it to replace skill, to replace creativity, trade, anything like that. But to use it as a tool, I've really kind of come around to its value, and in the workplace, in my personal life. Just in development for myself and, you know, many different ways, you know, to be able to have it there to bounce ideas off of, whether it's, again, for maybe things relating to my job or, you know, and my scope of focus there, or things to do at home, or to help me plan something, you know, because I'm a very type A personality and I like to plan stuff and be aware of what's going on. And I don't know, I just really kind of stepped into that in the last couple of months. And I literally use it daily throughout the day, all the time, through the browser, on an app on my phone, just as like a passive bounce an idea. Would this work? Like, how would I accomplish this? What do you think? Like, it's really wild to me how much I've started to use it, and really like how mind blowing it is.
Yeah.
Like the amount of processing and again, I'm talking just about a tool, and I understand the impact it has on the environment, like what it means large scale, and in the future, that's all needs to be discussed. But just it's there, it's available to use. And again, I've been trying to test a couple different ones out to see kind of where I feel like the best value is, you know, in terms of what I want to use it for. But like, you know, ChatGPT, Claude is a really great model that I've just started recently using, that's an interesting one, because I think that's like based more on an open source, like some sort of like environmentally friendly, or there's something special about Claude that I really need to look into more, because it kept coming up in my research to try to find other models to use. But it's kind of got this backing from a company that is promoting this idea of it's trained to be more safe and accurate and secure in terms of what it's talking about, how it's talking about certain topics, because there's horrible examples of other models that, you know, are just horrible models. Like openly wrong, openly racist, openly discriminatory, like depending on how it's trained. And that, that's something that also needs to be made aware of. And, you need to make sure you do your due diligence and, weed that out. And I think that they're all working to do that. But I don't know, for me I feel like every year we do this, I try to like throw a piece of technology into the conversation because our lives kind of revolve around it more and more every year in some way or another. But this is obviously something that is talked about all the time. It's in every meeting that I'm in at work. It's in, every, article that you hear about Hollywood, and it's on the podcast that we all love to listen to all the time. So, I finally come around to it, and I got to be honest, man, like as a tool, a genuine tool to enhance my skill set and to make me a better worker, or to make me a better employee, to make me a better planner, organizer, just a better person in some ways. Like I've found so much value in it recently. And so I'm thankful for that kind of stuff.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like the stuff you're talking about sounds like there's obviously still accuracy is a big thing for me. If they're improving the accuracy of the information for that kind of getting like a survey of information, right. I just usually find the stuff that comes, like I hate when I get that in my web searches, because so often if I know about the subject, I know how inaccurate it is. But it makes me think about how when I don't know about the subject, how often I might be like, oh, that sounds right. And yeah. I hate that sort of creep towards that sounds right that a lot of people might be going with. But I know that you are a high functioning type A person. So to me, it's like the idea that a person like you is using it to be more efficient doesn't trigger the same alarms in my head of like people that aren't doing their due diligence, like using it as a shortcut to get through the next minute, the next task, the next hour. So again, I know that it's like a weird thing. It's like you certainly can't legislate like, well, what quality of person are you though that's going to be using this? But I think that like I will agree with what you said about how it's like it seems like at least for the near future we're going to be dealing with it in some way or the other. So if you can come to terms with it and use it as a tool, what you're describing doesn't sound like the stuff that makes my blood run cold. The only thing that bothers me about that is the medical information that might be inaccurate that people might get, or anything. Just even just.
And that exists on the internet everywhere. Right. Keep that in mind.
And I think
the person that sees that and follows that is probably going to also click on the first Google search result that is correct. True. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not excusing it, but you're absolutely right. Is that it's scary that it's very quickly and visible. It's very quickly visible, at the top of these searches. And to be clear, like I'm not specifically talking about that. When you do a Google search, that little thing, snapshot it puts at the top of the screen.
No, I know you're not.
That's kind of parsing the results and telling you something, But I mean, honestly, I'll be very transparent. I'm trying to learn JavaScripting, and the way I've been able to use that to learn how to JavaScript, it's blowing my mind. Like how well it explains it to me so that it makes sense to me, and I can test it. I have a sandbox I can play in and break stuff and things like that for a role that I'm, trying to do more with at my job. And like, I could read about how to do it, but like doing it and it telling me like, oh, well, you need to check this line, you need to check that line. This is what this is not doing. Like, it's helping me like triage my own learning. And I just feel like that's a huge element of it that I've just found like so impressive, and the accuracy in that arena is incredible. Like, again, putting it into action, like with what I've learned and being able to show it in a production area, it's like I'm just I'm loving that element of it. And then even just like the other things, like little silly things, like which is probably more comparable to what you're talking about, like if you do like a generic search, it's like I just love the interaction. Like there's so much more refinement that can be done, even if you're trying to dig deeper into the results. And I don't know. I'm just trying to be more open to it because I was definitely a lot more closed off, and I had a couple people like kind of really try to convince me of it. And And in certain elements of my day to day, it's like it's definitely been impressive, and I'm really liking the idea of like using it as a tool to learn, and I don't know, just like augment things and tasks that I don't need to spend a lot of time doing anymore. But yeah, so
cool.
Well, I'm cautious. I think we have an open acceptance rule for anybody's Schmanksgiving, but I'm cautious about your AI. But again, what you've just said sounds like a few years ago people were doing that with AI, and you would hear about it, and it didn't make anybody upset or scared. It's all these corporations that want to seemingly cut
replace
as many
people.
creative people, or
I'm not
just
about that.
jobs in general.
I don't. Yeah.
But when I think about like, oh, how many times did I do the self-checkout, or what? How many times did I embrace the technology that was cutting out someone's job? You know, and that's where you stop and think, okay, well, that's that argument of like, well, should the robots be giving us more time to make the art instead of making the art? Like that's that argument you saw. So I don't know. It's an ongoing thing, but I think figuring out what can actually be done with it attitude towards the technology is definitely a more proactive and maybe even a more forward-thinking attitude than my sort of like, I'm happy to die on the hill of never embracing it. But, there's so many things I embrace that are applications of more or less AI technology that is, again, to me, it's that key word of tool. Like, it's a tool.
That's it. Tool.
It's not doing the work.
I try to lead with that. Like I don't want to say it any other way. So it's like it's a very.
Well, I mean, I'm not even calling you out. I'm just saying like that's where it's
it's valid.
We've been using this technology. Like whenever I've used like an audio plugin that like
exactly. I was just thinking about saying that to you.
Smooths out vocals or whatever. It's like it's the difference between generative AI that is scraping work and then emulating it is totally different from AI that's just emulating like a piece of equipment or a piece of gear, or in this case, as you're seeing, like a way to tap into a body of knowledge with a very targeted search for information that's interactive. I mean, again, that's as a learning tool. It's like I'm an educator. I can't sit here and say like, no, that can't possibly be a good learning tool. I'm like, well, no, that sounds in some ways like it could be a great learning tool. It's just the quality of the information, and again, it's down to the judiciousness and work ethic, for lack of a better phrase, of the person you're talking about. So
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
It's crazy how AI is in everything. I'm like using it in Photoshop. It's like interpreting a background that doesn't exist because there's a person right there. It's just like that kind of stuff is crazy. Or
wild.
Pulling sound stems from things that don't exist. It's wild, man. It's wild.
But Ronald, that's a great example of the difference there. Of like, remember that Beatles song that came out where they had cleaned up the vocal? People said it was like, oh, they used AI to make John Lennon's voice. And it's like, that's not what they did. They used all the recordings and all the references they had of his voice to train software to know how to like round out this bad recording with proper kind of frequencies and da-da-da-da. They didn't sit down and type in like what you picture with AI prompts. John Lennon's voice singing this word, that's not what they did. So I think that like we're just down to like, is there still human ingenuity, and is there still like, did you just make a person able to do something they never could have accomplished before, in the sense of a creative 100%. Person with skills? Not did you just make a person who could never have made anything make something and then say, oh, this is better than something a person can make? Because that's usually the attitude. Like all the AI stuff that you see is like people saying, look at this photorealistic perfect thing, and it's like, no, this looks like shit. It doesn't look it doesn't look good. A part of me says the market will just work that out on its own, and that people will always prefer stuff made by people. But as recent decisions made en masse in our country would indicate, you can't always trust popular taste.
That's true. That's true.
But hey, I'm ready to move on to my
let's go
next pick. Did you like that segment?
I liked it. I appreciate that.
So I actually have a very low tech pick, but it's not going to be my next pick. My next pick is a very simple one, but I feel like we've talked about this on the show, and so maybe you guys have some thoughts about this. But I've realized recently it's a little connected to the overall attitude I have about just entertainment. I mean, there's so many great prestige shows that we love that are so well made, and they take like 2 or 3 years to get a new season out,
Yeah.
And on the other hand, you have these movies that come, or these shows that come out like clockwork, but it's like 22, it's like network shows that to me, honestly, are a little too formulaic. Like if I try to watch like a network sitcom, it's hard for me to lock in and just love it. I can sometimes watch, like Nikki and I watch some Survivor, we watch some Gordon Ramsay shit, but we don't watch a lot of network like sitcoms and dramas because they do feel a little padded out. I do like a little sense of a story.
Sure.
So I think what I'm thankful for this year is prestige shows that feel like real TV shows. And by that, I really mean, do you come back every year with a new season around the same time? And therefore, I just want to tip my hat to Only Murders in the Building and Slow Horses.
Slow Horses, yeah. That
have both pulled off 4 seasons in 4 years. And these aren't like shitty shows that lack production value and whatever. They're just doing what television used to do, which is when the new season that you've just finished watching is wrapping up, there's a writer's room that's working on the next season somewhere, and they're starting to film it soon. Like, I like that respect for the sort of regularity of it. That makes it feel more like a television show. There's other ways that shows can feel more like shows, which is having episodes that feel like episodes, and not just as though you took a 10-hour movie and chopped it into pieces.
Right.
And I think both The Penguin and, in its own way, Agatha All Along recently both had a satisfying sense of like, oh, this is a show with episodes and not just a prestige mush of binge this anytime you want, but particularly that thing of coming back around the same time every year. What We Do in the Shadows is another show that's like, it definitely feels networky, but it's like, it's got the shorter season and feels a little special when it comes around. But I think they've done 6 seasons, maybe in 6 years. Maybe they had a year where they were down because of the strike and COVID or whatever, but they've been very consistent. The production, like there's a pipeline. You feel like these shows are conceived like shows and not like mini series that might get another round, and even something that's definitely getting another round, like The House of the Dragon. If you checked on that, I bet they haven't started filming the 3rd season yet. Like, I bet scripts are still being polished or something. So that means, you won't see it for forever. I don't know. There's just or maybe they just started filming, but either way, I just think it's great when a show comes back. Like, I love seeing that little notice that there's a new season of like Only Murders in the Building coming up, because it's always like, oh yeah, it's a show that comes out every year, just like every show used to do.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for shows that feel like television shows and that give us a little bit of that. Also, these are all weekly shows that don't go by the binge model that I'm talking about too. So even though I like a binge, I do think it's almost like that conversation is over, and the episodic dropping week to week seems to have overall won. There's still some shows that come out as a binge, but it seems like most shows they want to build a little hype around, they know they can get you to tune in week to week.
Yeah.
Or at least that's the goal. So, yeah. TV shows that act like TV.
Pretty damn cool.
You know what else? My next wish, just one last thought. My next wish for a show to be a yearly show, even though I don't think it's possible, but I think if Bad Monkey came back every year, that would feel about right. It doesn't need to be like a special event. That just needs to be like a hangout show,
Yeah.
More time with these characters.
Cool.
So, Ronald?
I may have said this last year, but boutique labels. These companies doing God's work, finding less mainstream movies, remastering them, getting updated interviews. It's just, there's something happening, this renaissance of physical media. I think there's a healthy understanding at this point that everything isn't going to be on streaming. And then, there's some things that people like to have tangible because they understand that idea. Like, for example, I like Batteries Not Included. It's one of my favorite movies in the last couple. When I was a kid, I used to watch it constantly. And this imprint in Australia called Imprint actually put it out. I got it from a comic book store in Annapolis. And it just felt really nice to have something that I didn't know I could get other places in this quality. That's another thing. Like, typically sometimes on streaming, you're getting the version of the film that's like the DVD one, or like the first like 480p where it's like these are like from
I need more P than that.
Yeah, you need more P than that. These are coming from 4K composites and stuff like that. Think about Vinegar Syndrome. Steve was talking about getting rad from Vinegar Syndrome. This company is taking these lesser known movies and movies that were popular at the time that didn't seem to carry the popularity into the decades following and bringing them to bigger audiences. For example, Arrow Video's doing Demolition Man. Really cool. And it's supposed to have a ton of special features, new interviews with Wesley Snipes and Sylvester Stallone. And I just love that there's this preservation of old stuff still happening. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. I'm getting more things because of it. It just feels real good. And I keep a digital copy. I like digital stuff, but should that disappear, I'll always have a disc.
Yes,
or have a disc. So
it's true.
Yeah, that is my pick. Physical boutique labels.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I think we were talking about that just a couple of weeks ago. Maybe because of maybe we did a Let's Get Physical about the batteries not included.
Yeah.
Release. But no, I think you're right that it's interesting, and I feel like this maybe has come up several times. Just that it's interesting that a lot of these movies that aren't getting the respect on like at large like that they're still getting the effort put into like good bonus materials and a good presentation and finding the best possible version. It feels like for a while there you would have just assumed every movie was going to get treated that way, but then we went through that last decade or so where streaming kind of took over and all these streaming libraries that change and you lose access to things, and people are maybe kind of realizing, oh yeah, you can't just assume that a movie's always going to be, the catalog's always going to be available. So you're right. I love those little guardians of not just the big movies, but movies like Batteries Not Included that deserve a little love, and it's nice to know someone cares.
Yeah, for sure.
I think my next one is going to be, I was going to go with a specific brand, but I think maybe I'll just go with an overall idea. And I think it's called, I want to call it, I guess you guys can help me rename this if you come up with a better name, but it's like subscription healthcare. Not insurance, although you can involve it in this if you like. But I this year I have a pretty good healthcare plan through my job. It's one of these consumer directed health plans, where there's a higher deductible, but your company gives you a little money for taking it because it's cheaper for them, all that good stuff. Right. I have no problem with it. But I have a lot of anxiety. I'm a pretty paranoid parent of my children when they're not feeling well. Mm-hmm. And, I get into these situations where I'm like, should I take them to the doctor, the urgent care? Should I not? Because I'm exposing them to things, maybe in those environments that they don't need to. And
should I take them to that witch in the woods behind the house?
Yeah. With the big kettle. Yeah, it's weird. But I don't know. Like I've always felt that way since having children, and obviously through the times we've lived through in the last 4 or 5 years. But I come across a product earlier this year called Blueberry Pediatrics, which I was like targeted for.
Oh.
And, again, I don't hesitate if I know something's wrong, but there's a lot of situations that are very simple things like ear infections, sore throats, things like that, where I don't know that I need to take my child every single time if there was a way to get this diagnosed. And obviously telemedicine blew up during COVID and the pandemic era that we just all went through. So the idea of offering a subscription-based healthcare option really appealed to me, even though I have insurance, because basically through this product that I am a subscriber of, and I'm not trying to plug it necessarily, although I will praise it, is that you pay like a flat fee each month. It covers all the kids in your house, and you can have unlimited chats in this app and unlimited telemedicine visits with pediatricians across the country.
Wow.
And I have used it so much. It's $18 a month. And you can use your HSA for it. And I don't want to get too in the weeds about healthcare, but healthcare is a big problem in this country. Yeah. And I'm fortunate to have a plan. But for those that don't, this is something that could be very appealing because, you can do telemedicine visits. You can do, the video chats or the audio chats. They give you a medical kit as a subscriber, like of all the necessities that you would need for your child: a thermometer, a pulse oximeter, an otoscope to take a video of your child's inner ear if you think they have a, you know, and
What?
that all, and they give you an app that does it all wirelessly and it goes right to them. And I'm in love with it. And I've told many people, friends, family about it. Some have joined it and have experienced a very good time with it, like I have. But it's those situations. It gives me a lot of peace of mind. And the fact that that kind of has grown out of a horrible era of our lives is a really huge silver lining to me. And again, I'm talking about tools that I use to make my life better and to make myself feel better day to day because of the anxiety that I carry about my kids' well-being, especially specifically theirs. That product is amazing. And I've had a great experience. I've done the basic stuff that I'm talking about, that you can get strep kits from them that I've used to diagnose or not diagnose strep throat. Like, it's amazing how much is available for me to do if I have the confidence in myself to do it, the trust of my children to do it, and the peace of mind that, like, I don't have to go to a doctor's office all the time for every little thing, but I can still take care of what's going on.
Right.
And they can call in prescriptions. You know, it's literally a really impressive model. And I say not just them, because I also just signed up for myself to try One Medical, which is Amazon. They acquired this company, which is the same model, in the last couple of years. And I've signed that up for myself for the same kind of scenarios.
Oh, wow.
You know, basic stuff. I don't want to go. I don't have to get an appointment. I don't have to wait and sit around a bunch of other people who are trying to find out what's going on with, you know, their health or well-being. And it's the same kind of crazy thing of like it's like a very affordable monthly subscription that, you know, you can do unlimited video visits. And it kind of blows my mind. Again, it's another one of these things. It's still technology related, but the fact that it's so easy to connect with medical professionals and address something that is really needs to be addressed sooner than later, you know, in some cases. And if it's something that they can't do, they say that, you know, and you need to go to some, you know, a doctor to have your lungs listened to or anything like that. But yeah, I love the idea, the availability of these kinds of services to someone, even in my situation where I have insurance, but more importantly, to someone who might not, because they may not go get checked out because they can't afford to, whether it's them or their child or another loved one. But I mean, you know, getting access to these kinds of alternatives are really interesting to me. And, you know, for the amount that it costs and to scale for these companies, it's something that I'm sure is going to become more and more prevalent, because I see a lot of them already popping up in the last 2 or 3 months that are kind of comparable to what I currently use and to the one I just signed up for through Amazon services. But yeah, I don't know, just this idea of access to healthcare. I love it. I love that it's more affordable. It's on demand. It's, you know, the virtual telemedicine element of it. Some people won't like that, and that's completely fine. If you want to go to the doctor and physically be there and for that personal thing maybe you have with your physician. But for some of those things that are more common, lower level things, I think is where this really satisfies a need. And yeah, just the access of it is valuable, I think. And knowing a lot of friends who don't have healthcare at all, you know, these kinds of things could be a solution for people in that situation. And I love that there's an option now at all.
Yeah. Wow.
Because, you know, you go into a doctor or urgent care without insurance and it's $100, you know, and you guys probably belong to one of these subscriptions for $100 a year, you know, and that's just, it's crazy to me that's even an option now. And I think it's great.
Wow. Thanks for telling me, man.
Yeah. I say that to you, Ronald, because I mean, I know you're in a similar mindset that I am about a lot of that stuff, especially as it comes to our children.
Yeah.
Because you have a younger child still, John. I know we're all kind of in sync with it, but it's a really great service. Yeah, the one that I use for the kids is called Blueberry, but yeah, it's great, and I love just options and tools that you can use to take care of those that you love, and also just kind of like
also those that you hate.
Yeah, by not using it. Yeah, you could just electively not use it. But yeah, that's my service that I have taken jump into, both for the kids and myself, and probably will for Aaron in the near future, based off my experience so far.
Cool.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's just like good advice.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't know we were trying to be useful. Jeez.
Yeah, I'm sorry, John.
Well, my final pick is, as I said before, I have a very low-tech pick. This year on the show, maybe before this year, but definitely recently, we started, and I've already alluded to it, the Let's Get Physical portion of the show. We've been talking about physical media.
Right.
And I've been mentioning occasionally books that are sort of related to the movies that I've been reading. And I've been, because I do teach... in two different film departments, one at a college and one's like a digital media department at a college, and then at a film department at a high school. I'm a couple of years into this, so I'm kind of trying to make sure that I'm, keeping that new information coming into my head so that I'm not just saying the same shit every year. And so I've been doing more and more reading and research in film. And so I guess what I'm kind of thankful for is research, but I'm also sort of thankful that I enjoy research, like I know a lot of people don't, but I love like digging around and trying to find that information. And like, just to there's sort of different categories of I'll just give a few quick recommendations for audio people who want to know like the basics of like production and audio equipment on a film and different things you might do.
Yeah.
There is a book by Rick Veers called The Sound Effects Bible. This is the cover. This really bothered me when I got this in the mail. See how the cover's printed kind of offset? It just wasn't, it wasn't bad enough to return. And this is a very user-friendly kind of entry-level approach to some of the ideas, but it's a very good reference of everything from, editing sound in apps to, to the like what kind of mic you want to use and what kind of equipment you want to use and what the different roles on a set would be. I also, though, need to feed my brain with like information from the greats. And so teaching sound design, it was really important for me to find a lot of information that kind of predated the current era of learning from YouTube videos and learning about software. And so I found a book called Sound on Film, Interview with Creatives or Creators of Film Sound. This is a book that, it's got like people like Walter Murch and Ben Burt and, basically everybody who was big, in the 70s, 80s, 90s in sound design. There's the kind of the cream of the crop from them. But this is like not quite a textbook, but they talk about specific techniques and you get a sense of why a certain movie was important and kind of what they did. And these are like, long form interviews with the sound designers themselves. So it's not like puff pieces about movies that talk about sound.
Right.
It's like you're actually getting the stories. And again, a 10 or 20 page interview with some of these people that gets very technical in some ways. So Sound on Film, edited. I think all the interviews are by this guy, Vincent Labruto. But anyway, his name's the one on the book. And then lastly, film fans, read screenplays. I don't know if everybody out there is in the habit of reading screenplays, but for the Coen Brothers podcast that I've been doing, Coen Pro, I have been reading the screenplay of each Coen Brothers film like as I'm covering it. And what I've discovered is their scripts are their movies. Like if you know their movies, especially like a sequence or a shot, if you look at the script the way it's described, it will shock you how much what they do is on the page. They also have very clever ways of writing about the world where they have stage direction mixed with dialogue, mixed with, like who the speaker is and stuff. It's just very readable. And I think these books, maybe these books, when they print them up, they're formatted a little bit to be readable. But even beyond that, just as someone who has an eye on screenplay format and how people bend it without breaking it, so to speak, because a really good screenplay will kind of bend screenplay format. They have a really very clever way that's very almost novelistic of like involving you. It's like I can see why their scripts have always knocked people out since the early days of their career, that these people read a script of theirs and are like, oh, I can, let's get the money together, let's make this, because you see the movie on the page. So I don't know, just as a film fan, anyone out there who loves the Coen Brothers movies or just loves movies, or if you're a wannabe writer and you want to see like what not just a good screenplay, but like in my mind a great screenplay is one where when you read it you see the movie in your head. Their screenplays definitely do that. So That was my special bonus Let's Get Physical feature, all under the rubric of research. I just like it. I like to mark things up. I like to put little sticky tabs in the books I'm reading to remember certain things. I never used to do that, but as an older man, I realize how many books I have on my shelf where I love the book and I loved things about it, but I couldn't tell you what chapter or what page that great thing was on. And so now I love taking notes. I love doing research. Yeah. I'm thankful for the ability to enjoy research.
I'm next.
Yes, this is your final pick.
Oh man, this one's heavy, but I'm gonna try not to make it too sad. Okay, so I lost a couple people this year. I lost a cousin who affected pretty much everything I do in terms of design, and a good friend at work. And I realized that I am the person in between my daughter knowing who someone is and not knowing who someone is.
Oh yeah, wow.
And I was thinking about that with my dad and ancestors, like just the idea of like you being the proprietor of this information, and Aaron will be the proprietor of her family's information to our daughter. And I think it's important to do that stuff. I think I'm like getting to the point now where like, my daughter saw this picture I posted today of me, and she's like, "Oh, is that me?" And I'm like, "No, that's me." But
it does look like her though. I mean, like again, we knew that already, but yeah. I had that thought when I saw that.
Yeah,
and it was one of you and the cat.
Yes.
Diesel, was that the cat's
Diesel?
Name?
Yeah,
Diesel. That's a great name.
My dad named the cat Diesel because the cat sounded like a diesel engine, and he was an engineer. He's like, such a. He's like, yeah, that sounds like a diesel engine, because he wrote a Jetta with a diesel engine, and it sounded like the cat. Like it's crazy. And I think about my ancestors, and I think once somebody crosses the plane, they become your ancestor. And I think I have some guilt for not telling my cousin how much he meant to me. And some of that just has to do with like, he affected, he's the reason why I like clothes with a lot of logos. He's the reason why I like sneakers. He's the reason why. And I never told him this stuff. I started a clothing line because of him. Never told him. So he's like out in the world and he never knew. And while it feels like a super sad thing, I don't think that because he's not physically with me that I can't tell him that. Mm-hmm. And this is the first time that I felt like that. It's the first time that I felt like it's okay to like, just tell somebody or like say it to the sky, obviously, right? But it's okay to tell people too.
Right. Or even use that as an object lesson with other people. Like,
yes,
oh yeah, I 100%. Now know I can
100%.
Pay homage to how much I love my cousin by making sure I don't, my cousin would say, hey, I know, but maybe other people in your life don't know. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think, no, it's interesting though. That idea also, Ronald, that idea you mentioned about being the keeper of the flame in some ways, as you get older and the older generation starts to phase out and you realize you're the older generation and you realize like, shit, if I don't tell this kid some of this stuff, these stories aren't going to go past me. It's a weird.
It's a strange thing.
It's a very, very heavy thought. Yeah, but it's also really important to embrace it. I think
it's super crazy because like, okay, so think about it like this. I lost my dad, right? The only granddad that my daughter knows is my stepdad, and so like I'm like we gotta tell Aaron has to tell her about her dad, and I gotta tell her about my dad. It's just like
you gotta get your dates straight, Ronald. There's nobody for you to turn to and say, wait, what was that?
Right.
I need to get my mom on record about some things while she can still recall some things.
Yes. And I'm thinking, I had this idea that it sounds heavy, but I think it might be fun. I want to sit my mom down and just go through her life, like have like a podcast essentially. Get my sister to do it with me, and we just talk to my mom about her experiences and like, how was it? She remembers when Martin Luther King got assassinated. She remembers, it's wild that I'm within arm's length of a person that remembers in her youth when Martin Luther King was assassinated. That's insane to me. that stuff feels so separate. It doesn't feel separate in like impact, but it feels separate in terms of generations.
Well, like you have it, and if you don't think about it, you don't even realize you have it. And then when it goes away, when you think about it, that's when you go, shit, I can't believe that person was alive all these years, and now I wish I could talk to him, you know? And
so like I think it's two things. It's don't feel so guilty about that. And, you know, like you said, apply that to the people that exist in your life, you know, the people you love, you know. That's why it's easier for me to say I love you guys than it would have been maybe 15 years ago, you know, because like, you know, you got to kind of train people to be the kind of a mirror of what you want, and, you know, in your reality. That's like love and calmness, and you guys are that for me. And I just really appreciate that when I hit you guys with this heavy stuff that you don't say, hey, Ronald, shut your sensitive ass up.
Well, also, your cousin will be happy you did wear a shirt with a lot of logos on it tonight.
Yeah, man. Yeah. It's crazy, man. I think here's the last part. I think as a person that moved to Towson, I think I separated the life that I had when I was younger from who I am now. And I think I forgot, you know, I'm like, oh, I lived in a place where like age didn't really matter when it came to death. It didn't, you know, there was like this. So I look at death very differently than a lot of people do.
Right.
And, you know, and because of that, I think I value it in a very different way. You know, I get real sappy because like people are important to me. And, you know, it just is one of those things. It feels different than it did before. You know, that's this thing somebody said to me, like, you know, mourn and feel it because you'll never feel the same way twice. And, you know, thinking about all this stuff, I thought that I'd be really emotional about it. I thought I'd be like sobbing talking to you guys, but now I'm like, I feel pretty good about this. I appreciate my life and the friends and all that stuff. And I do try to tell people as often as I can. I just feel like I fell a little short with this person just because he was such a big figure. You know, you don't feel like people have space in their head to hear stuff like that.
Right.
You know, if I go up to this giant and say, you really inspired me, I don't know if he'd be like, hey, get out of here, kid, punch me in the stomach and throw me out like Jazz from It's a Bel Air. So
I don't know that reference, but it sounds funny.
But yeah, just appreciate stuff, man. That's all. Ancestors and all that stuff. Yeah.
Just to be clear to listeners, I know Fresh Prince of Bel Air. I don't know about Jazz.
How about DJ Jazzy Jeff? Do you know him?
Oh, is that Jazzy? Jazzy?
Yeah.
I call him Jazzy.
Yeah. So
I call him by his birth name.
Oh yeah. So he's the guy that gets kicked out every other time he shows up.
Right.
Okay.
I kind of wish they would have did it in the new show, the more serious show. But
would that have fit the tone?
No, it wouldn't fit the tone at all. It wouldn't fit the tone at all. At all.
Now, which one is he's the rapper and he's the DJ?
The DJ.
Which one?
My last pick. I was gonna tag team it when you mentioned the movie theater stuff earlier, Runner. I figured I wanted to say something about movie going because I feel like I'm in a similar boat. My approach to it is a little, the angle I'm coming at it, which is a little different than what you did. But because I too haven't really been going to the movies a whole lot. I too am not entirely comfortable still going to the movies.
Yeah.
I long for it. I love it. It's extremely attractive and valuable to me. Like I want it in my life as much as possible. So the thing I'm thankful for is I want to say the premium large format screens. Ooh. Because I feel like if something lures me to the theater now more than even the movie, it's the fact that I can see it on those screens.
Hell yeah,
and
man.
Again, to tag on to your Wicked, you saw it on a Dolby screen that you talked about, I think last episode. It was like that theater specifically in the couple. There's a couple in our metropolitan area. I think like 2 or 3 of them. I worship those theaters, the Dolby screens, like the sound, the laser projection, the large format, even IMAX. You can include that in that as well. But those options, I could be dying to see a movie. I could have every intention to go see it. And it's just life is crazy. And I have my reservations still. But if that movie is on Dolby screen, like that's the bait to me. That's like, that'll tip me over.
Count me in.
That'll make me even more put the effort in to make it work. So, I like they're becoming more prevalent. They're, most of the theaters in our area has some sort of large format screen, whether it's Cinemark's XD, AMC's Prime. AMC also does the Dolby houses, IMAX, whatever you want to call it. If you have access to any of those things. And again, it's another differentiator that it's a lot. It's harder to replicate staying at home, and that's kind of the crux for me, is that like I could go to your basement and maybe have a better experience watching a movie than I would on a lot of the like local houses. I could go see a movie, I would still do that. Obviously, I would love to do that as much as possible, but for a variety of reasons, I just don't as much anymore. But I just wanted to give some attention and acknowledgement to an appreciation for those large format screens, the houses that really feel unique, and that really are the differentiators, that a lot of like really, really, I don't want to say cinephiles, or just movie going, in general, like you seek those screens out. Like when a movie gets re-released these days, it's in IMAX or Dolby, and it's there for a week. And, a lot of those showings are packed and or sell out. I just read this week that they're putting 7 back out in IMAX early next year. I couldn't be more excited to go see that in IMAX.
That's really cool.
And all these movies that we're talking about through the holiday corridor, I wish we would have seen Gladiator 2 on a premium screen. I thought we maybe would have, but I'd like to see Wicked like that, and I don't know. That's just a preference for me. So it's like, that's is that there's so much changeover with them because there's not a lot of them, in that first week or two. That's your shot. If they're going to be playing on those screens, you got to go, because the next week's movie that comes out, one of them's probably taking it away, but I love those houses. Again, I love IMAX, but my heart is the Dolby of it all. Is just, that's my boo right there. Like I need to see as many movies in the Dolby house as I can, and if I can, I will. And I'm just thankful that there's a handful of them around us that I can get to, and I have that opportunity when the time is right and it's the right movie. But PLF, baby. I love it.
Pretty damn cool. That's a good one.
I mean, I tried to think of something movie related for our podcast, but I was like, how many more movie things can I talk about that we haven't already talked about? But in recent time, the last year especially, I look back at like my movie tickets in my app, when you can, in my Movie Pass or my AMC app, and I'm like, what did I see and where did I see it? And the vast majority are on the Dolby or the Prime screens that AMC offers. And it's just because I love it. Like that experience you talked about, like, the sound, the butt kickers in the seats, the bass, just the immersion is just like, it's the new version of the immersion that I think, I seek out when I go to see a movie if possible.
Cool as hell, man.
Yeah, for sure. That's it for me.
That's a show.
That is what we call a show.
That's what Pat is for a show in these parts.
Show.
Yeah. That's Thrice Bigelow.
I would see on the PLF screen for sure.
Is this the best time to announce that Schmovie Studios has parted ways with Rob Schneider?
Oh yeah,
right.
Yeah. We had to reevaluate.
Yeah.
We're gonna recast. We'll get back to you guys. We'll get back.
We're looking for that next big project, honestly.
All right, guys. I don't know. So John's pick for next week's required viewing is called
Hidden Fortress.
Hidden Fortress on HBO Max.
From 1958.
And I don't know what we'll have. I don't know. This we'll probably get back into a hey, what have you watched kind of vibe.
Yeah.
The week after you hear this, be recovering from hopefully our bounty of food from Thanksgiving. Movieschmovie.com is the website. You can go there to listen to episodes, every episode we've ever put out. You can also link to a podcast platform of your choice. If you have one that you love and that you listen to all your podcasts in, they should all be there. And as well, we have the YouTube option. So youtube.com/movie podcast. You're not going to believe this when I tell you this, but if you go to YouTube, our channel, you can either watch us and listen to us or just listen. We have every possible option there. You can just subscribe, get that bell clicked, and you'll just say, hey, there's a new one out. You want to come watch it? You want to listen? You can go do some work and listen in the background. You don't need to look at us. I mean, I appreciate it. We'd all appreciate it. I think you would as well. Yeah. But it's up to you. But yeah,
and say if you don't even want to watch the whole thing, you're like, I just want to watch clips. I'm impatient. We got clips for you, bitch.
What?
And you can go right to the page and watch several clips that kind of embody the feeling of the podcast.
What they say in the movie we just watched? Fuck on that, bitch.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Almost fainted just
But yeah, that's great. That's a good point, Ronald. Yeah, you could even be more segmented with your intake of Movie Schmovie. Just be like, oh yeah, that sounds like a cool description of a short clip.
Yeah.
Anything helps us. It's all gravy. So we appreciate it all. But yeah, we'll be back next week. Thank you so much for listening. And as always, you made a day. Thanks.
Bye.